Hello and welcome to We Thought About Games, the podcast where games are looked at historically, fondly, and critically. I'm your host Sid Menon, and tonight we're going to talk about Mega Man X4, a game developed and published by Capcom for the PS1, Sega Saturn, and PC. Joining me tonight are Abby Denton.
Hello.
And Bryce Duzan.
Hello.
Alright, so Abby, what's your experience with Mega Man X4?
What is it, Christmas Day, whatever would have been the year after it came out, I don't think 97, 98? I did the history,
98.
I should have a record here. Yeah, 98, I got a PlayStation, I got this game, and I got Crash Bandicoot 2. And I gotta say, this game was a lot better. The 3D thing sort of made me anxious running toward the camera. I couldn't deal with it, because you don't know what's going on in front of you.
Fair enough.
Whereas Mega Man, you can see to the left, you can see to the right. The stuff that's going on toward the screen behind the camera, that's irrelevant. There's nothing there.
Alright, Bryce, how about you?
Well, as a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of PS1 games, so this was one of the few that I had and treasured. And this was, early internet-ish, so I remember, logging onto GameFAQs when that was, just getting started, and looking up, the boss guides and, all the, ideal weapons to use and all that kind of thing. But, yeah, I really love this game. I had, played quite a few Mega Man games, and this was the first one that, it was the first PS1 game in the franchise, so I had all these, ridiculous things, anime cutscenes and, awesome music and voice acting. And so I remember playing as a kid and just being, completely surprised and excited by, all these different things.
Nice. Yeah, a family friend, their son, for some reason, had the PC version, and he burned us a copy for my brother and I. Yeah, we kind of played it without much context. I think I'd seen Mega Man X before. But yeah, it was my first one, and of course, because it was the cool thing to do, we immediately looked up cheats and played with Ultimate Armor X. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I also opened up the cutscenes on the CD without any context, so there's a cutscene that kind of shocked me as a young child, and we'll get to it. You'll know.
What did it shock you for?
I wasn't expecting much violence in a Mega Man X game.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
What was playing it on the PC like? The Mega Man series and the Final Fantasy series, they both always had PC releases, but as far as I was concerned, they were mythical. I never saw them. I don't know anyone who ever had them. What on earth was it like playing, a game sort of as athletic as Mega Man X?
I actually also had Final Fantasy VII twice on PC.
What?
That thing had really bad controls. Now, for the PC version of Mega Man X, I guess it's just because I was, in middle school, so nothing was beyond my skill level. I don't know how I pulled it off, because, I tried it again on my Vita recently, and I died to the first boss.
Huh.
A little harder to control on there, but still, that's pretty bad, considering how many times I beat this game.
I was actually a lot worse at video games in middle school. That's weird.
Well, the example I always use is with Rocket Knight Adventures on the Genesis. The first time I played it, I was so young I didn't know what the word difficulty meant, so I didn't change it. And I got really far on it, and then I set it to kids difficulty on emulation in high school, and I got absolutely hammered.
Huh.
Alright, so, Abby, you want to take the history?
So when we're coming into the release of Mega Man X4, this is sort of after the release of X3, which is sort of how sequences work. There's 3 and then you have 4, and X3 was sort of received as more of the same compared to the first 2 Mega Man X games. They were all very, very similar graphically, very similar upgrade scheme. X3 actually, I think, did a lot of things that X4 took back out, like the chips and getting to summon your right armors, but it was still sort of seen as 16-bit stagnation. Everyone was excited to see sort of the next big thing. There was actually a big drop in magazine review scores going into X3, and so people were sort of baying to move to the 32-bit era. And so Capcom had been releasing the game sort of every year up to this point, but then for X4 they they took a year and a half because they really wanted to take out all the stops, which is hilarious to us now, having seen The Last Guardian take 10 years to complete.
Mm-hmm. And Final Fantasy 15 and Persona 5.
No, I'm talking about things that were worth the wait.
Wow.
Yeah, so X4 sort of does a lot of graphical flourishes just sort of to show off that it's the new generation, like the giant first boss, which they'd had before, but he's
a much bigger boy.
Sort of like chasing you through the stage, yeah, and there's all the stuff with like the doors that you can sort of see either side of in the first level, which sort of blew my mind when I was little. All the water in Web Spider's stage and all of the CG stuff going on in, Cyber Peacock, that was all trying to show off. And compared to Mega Man 8, which was sort of its contemporary as the first 32-bit. And obviously in history, this was the first game where Zero was the main character to up the ante for the new gen, which sort of took away the big brother figure status that Zero used to have, and now he's sort of diegetically. That thing, he's sort of now unequal with X. And then in the later games in the series, if anything, he becomes the weaker of the duo. Like X6, where he doesn't show up until late, and he and X sort of have to share power-ups, where he's sort of always going to come in a little bit behind.
With this game, there's improvements in pretty much every single front. The graphics are a lot smoother. I wouldn't say there's any feeling that like there's a frame of animation missing in the SNES games, but there's just so many more on this version. They'd actually done a PlayStation 1 release of Mega Man X3. That was the year before. It seemed kind of more like a BT porting effort. It had anime cutscenes, which were novel at the time, but compared to X4's, like, they look kind of cheap.
I never knew X3 had anime cutscenes.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, but I mean, outside of the opening, the ending actually I don't think had one. It just had, like, the credits of X and Zero running down the highway. But they did put in a new credit song for that. But also they replaced the boss intro screens with anime ones of them like doing something and posing, and it does a camera close-up, which mostly doesn't feel cheap, except that Blizzard Buffalo's name is written in big letters as Billzard Buffalo.
I went to college with him.
But also the sound effects are a lot higher quality, or the X-Buster has a much more punchy sound to it, and the shot effects look a lot more powerful, even the basic shots.
Yeah, I remember the sound design and music of X4 being really impressive. The things that always got like stuck in my head were all the like different voice clips of like the bosses attacking and stuff. Like I was watching the long play for the game to like remind myself of everything, and that sound that the mushroom boss makes when you hit him with lightning web, that like has been stuck in my brain for like years now.
Oh, that actually was a question I wanted to ask. Is Split Mushroom or Aquaman who has a more annoying voice?
I think they might be the same from
Is it the
8,
yes?
because Swordman in 8 is definitely the same sort of Australian dude that Colonel is voiced by in this game.
Oh, really?
I never put that together. Huh.
They did add voice acting, which is more of in a modern sense, a novelty, but it was really cool at the time because none of the voice acting's good.
Yeah, it's fine. It's serviceable, but it's not like great.
In a tradition they carried from Mega Man 8, X has a much higher voice than people probably imagined him having.
I remember being surprised by that, but also surprised that Zero's was so deep. I remember him like grunting like, "It's not over yet," every time you hit low health, which happened a lot with me because I'm not very good at this game. Sorry, but yeah, the voice acting's cool.
And also the soundtrack, like Bryce mentioned, it's much higher quality. Like, it's moved on from the sort of Nintendo chip sounds to the Super Nintendo's sort of MIDI samples. I mean, the SNES has that like cool reverb effect that kind of is pretty well known, but outside of that, especially X3, the instrumentation, a lot of people complain about it because it's supposed to have like a hard rock sound, but it's a hard MIDI guitar, and it sounds kind of grating. For X4, they actually have sounds that sounded much more like synthesizers you'd hear in like a soundtrack or a song. Like if you listen to a demo for like one of the demo songs that comes in like a Roland, what's it, JV880 or one of those synthesizers, is like, this sounds like a PlayStation game. And I think that kind of equipment had become more popular around that time. And you can hear it here. It's a lot more melodies and solos.
Talking of really good music pieces, I think this is one of the only times when the music of like the intro of the game changes when it's brought to the US for the better. The J-pop for this game is a little mediocre. I remember I had One More Chance like on my computer as a kid, and I'd listen to it until my parents grounded me.
The US intro sounds much more like the music that's in the game, whereas in Japan, they licensed the song Makanai Ai ga Kito Aru by UK Nakama, which is just like a house song. I saw the music video for it actually, and even that one says AKA Rockman X4 intro song. And it's just like one of those 90s videos of some, like, here's a musician, but they're just going, like, they're on a train, and now they're doing their laundry, and look at how normal they are.
You know, Reploids had to take trains, they had to do laundry. We see Mega Man on a train ride in this very game.
But yeah, they also had some gameplay changes in this because of the added buttons. You could use the X-Buster while having other special weapons equipped, so you weren't going into the menus quite as much, though you could also switch weapons using the buttons without going into the menu.
That was also used for Zero's, like, Giga Crush too, right?
Yeah, and Zero's new playstyle is actually very different from X's because he fights exclusively with his close-range saber.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool at the time. I liked how X and Zero played like, completely different characters. But it also made it so that playing as Zero was a lot more difficult than playing as X.
I was actually going to say that I find Zero a lot easier because I have never used like one of X's or like any of the Mega Man's like special weapons ever. Like I never think to switch over to one of the other weapons, and unless it's a boss that needs a weakness that I'm having trouble with, then it's just not a thing that I think about, because it's like elixirs in RPGs where you don't want to waste it.
No, yeah, totally.
Whereas with Zero, you sort of have like infinite. I think there are like 2 that have weapon energy, or maybe that's a later game.
The Giga attack has weapon energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like otherwise you don't really have to worry about like, oh, I missed the uppercut. That's fine. I can try to set this guy on fire a few seconds later.
Right. Yeah, there's just a few specific places where Zero kind of is penalized for his playstyle.
Especially because it's still an old school platforming game where running into enemies harms you.
Right.
His attacks are likened to fighting game inputs, but they're a lot simpler than that, because you just hold like up and press the special attack button and you'll do the uppercut. Or you press it down and special attack when you're in midair and you'll do the ice dropping attack.
I thought that was cool too, where you kind of had to put in inputs for the attacks. And it feels like there's a few different things that kind of came from like a fighting game kind of inspiration. Well, Magma Dragoon in particular, but also a couple of the other bosses felt like fighting game characters than just like, oh, this is a boss and this is their pattern type thing.
Alright, so let's get into it. The game has actually 2 different intro cutscenes depending on which character you pick. So in X's intro, you see a mansion with a mysteriously cloaked figure that's definitely Sigma, because you played the other 3 Mega Man X games, and he was in all of those. And this person looks exactly like Sigma and sounds exactly like you'd think the villain of these games would sound like. And he's meeting with a character named General, who's the head of a group called Repliforce. And he wants him to destroy the Maverick Hunters, who are the people that X is part of.
You possess enough power to destroy them!
You are dismissed.
What?
I will not betray the humans. Remove yourself from my sight. My business with you has concluded.
Very well. But you will change your mind soon, I assure you.
Sigma just walks off with his turned on, like, energy sight. Just got it under his cloak.
Seems dangerous.
Yeah, because he's especially holding it in a way such that General can't see it. So it's close to his own chest.
Sigma dies more often than he eats breakfast, guys.
Whereas Zero's intro cutscene, he sees a shadowy figure that's definitely Dr. Wily, because if you played the other Mega Man games, you know what he looks like, and his silhouette stands out, if for nothing else than his giant mustache.
I actually thought Dr. Robotnik might have built Zero.
But who are you? After him. He is my nemesis. Our rivalry is what gives me motivation in life. Now go. Destroy him. That's an order.
And he sees these visions of these other Reploids, robots, blown apart, and Sigma, like, being scared for some reason. And in both cases, after that, you go to the stage select screen, but there's no stages yet, you just get a dialogue box that says that Mavericks have attacked Sky Lagoon in X's case, or Zero's told that Repliforce has attacked the Sky Lagoon, and he appears to recognize that name. That's when you get to the first intro stage for this game, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's clear that they're like, okay, we got this technology, we have to, like, hook them in right from the start so that they're, like, excited about the game.
Yeah, there's searchlights going in the background and foreground. There are scenes where there's a lot of enemies on screen, and it doesn't slow down, at least in any of the versions I've played.
Mm-hmm.
And the enemies are a lot more detailed. Also, as you're running through this first area, a giant dragon thing appears in the background and starts shooting at you from the background.
It's so cool, that dragon thing.
Yeah, it's called Eregion.
Let's call it that dragon thing instead.
Yeah, that's a much better name.
Most of the enemies you fight are these dragonfly robots, and also there are these soldiers with guns that also occasionally throw grenades. They're really pretty well animated and have expressive faces.
I always wanted to be friends with those guys. Oh, you know what it is? The design of those guys always reminded me of guys in a different game who did the same sort of thing, where there's like a circle and they like hold their arms behind themselves and they like throw stuff at you.
Was it the guys from Gunstar Heroes?
I think that might be what I was thinking of.
Because they do a lot of pratfalls in both of those.
I think there were also guys like that in Clown Man stage in Mega Man 8.
Yeah, once you get far enough, though, you enter through what appears to be a boss door, but you just run into another hunter named Magma Dragoon, and he says that that giant Maverick destroyed the generator, and Sky Lagoon is going to plummet to the city below, which is going to kill a lot of people, which is already a bit more directly violent than the other games ever addressed. Your character will muse that, oh, this is going to kill a lot of people, and they teleport out, and then it loads into another section, because that's another change that they made in X4, is that stages are explicitly split into two sections.
Did they do that in Mega Man 8? Oh, yeah, they did, because like the second half of Tengu Man stage is like the side-scrolling shooter. So I wonder if that was something like the PlayStation couldn't handle a whole level at once or something?
Yeah, I mean, they almost certainly had to do that.
I really like what it does to design, where a lot of the times they'll try to go a completely different direction with something. So like, you won't just have the fire level and it's like 20 minutes of jumping across lava. It's 10 minutes of jumping across lava and then 10 minutes of... There aren't a lot of interesting things you can do with lava.
I thought it was always interesting, because it kind of goes from the first part, you know, on the ship, and then you go to the city, and it's like, oh, this horrible thing has happened. But it never actually shows like anything happening. It's just like, here's before and here's directly after. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of have to like assume like, yeah, this crashed and a lot of people died, it was awful, but we're not actually going to show you any of that.
I mean, there's some buildings in the background, but the area you're in is very much just rock walls falling and claws popping out of them to shoot you.
Yeah.
When you get further into the stage, if you're playing as Zero, then right before the boss, you'll see a character you recognize as, her name is Iris. She's laying on the ground, she's apparently been injured, and she warns you that there's big Maverick up ahead. For X, there's just no one here, because we didn't mention it, but then an intro cutscene, it shows Zero having like all this familiar, like, he's sparring with Colonel, and he's smiling at Iris and stuff, and every shot with X in it is just him shooting this X-Buster. Zero has friends and X has a gun. Yeah, also normally Zero is X's friend character, but their stories are completely separate. They never run into each other and they never interact except X's ending. Which I could see kind of being a letdown if you liked that angle, the camaraderie in the first 3 games. Well, the first one and the third one and maybe the second one.
Yeah, I think the second one had the most emotionally effective arc, even if they rarely interact.
Oh, where you rebuild him?
It inspired the most fan fiction, I'll tell you what.
But then you move a little further, no boss door this time, and you fight Eregion.
That fight always struck me as a letdown just because he always felt like he came down in 3 hits compared to how big he was. Which I guess is true of most first level bosses, but it felt unfair. They could have made him try to hit you less and the fight just takes longer, I don't know.
I mean, you have to play it fairly safe if you want to avoid getting hit by him, because that claw slash attack, up close, it's gonna hit you. I don't even know if you can dash out of the way in time.
Yeah, and he spends most of the time just kind of staring at you, and then sometimes attacking.
Yeah.
But it's also the first boss,
Mm-hmm.
so I assume they didn't want to make it that hard.
Yeah.
Look, man, I'll tell you what, Invincible Vile would have beaten the crap out of this guy. Plot armor, man.
Yeah. You can actually, during the first stage, the first half of Sky Lagoon, you can hit his claws when they come down and damage him, and that's actually much harder than this boss fight, but there's no point to doing the first one because he just shows up here again anyway. And it'll take you more time to defeat him than to just do the rest. But he does have a unique boss track that's pretty good. After you defeat him, Colonel from Repliforce shows up. Whoever you're playing as, you'll tell him, since you're at the site of this incident, we're gonna require you to disarm and come back with us to Maverick Hunter headquarters. And in both cases, Colonel will say, no, we were here to help people. Screw you. We're leaving. And that's what kicks off the conflict in this game.
Yeah, it's a little trite.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're also going for pride is what caused the downfall of these people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's always no, come on, dude. Just we literally just want to ask you some questions and then you can go.
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to is that the Maverick Hunters are the guys who search your bag at the movie theater to make sure you're not smuggling in candy. They're a bunch of narcs.
I mean, yeah.
Sigma did nothing wrong. Tweet at the podcast with the hashtag Sigma did nothing wrong.
The next cutscene you get, after you clear the intro stage, General is announcing to the rest of Repliforce that they're going to build a refuge in space away from humans because they've been unjustly accused and they don't want to attack anyone, they just want to live separately.
This is about our liberty and security. We must battle for our own individual rights and our own survival. Together we will build our nation, a sanctuary for all Reploids, our own utopia. Let us forge onward towards a new golden era for the Repliforce.
I too share the general sentiment. Take heed, we have no other choice. Let us fight valiantly, with courage and pride, without fear, for we are the Repliforce. The most powerful army in history!
The General has finally taken action. And now, my Maverick Hunters, what will you do? I'll be watching closely from here on out.
Also, Sigma is watching this on a TV somewhere in, a mansion bedroom? Sigma just has a mansion, I guess? But apparently this is all according to his plan of Colonel's gonna show up and then not do a really simple thing, and this is gonna kick off a fight, and this will benefit me. But even though they say there's no, conflict, as soon as you get to the stage select screen, Zero will be joined by Iris, and she'll say that a coup has begun. Whereas X will meet a character who you might have seen in the intro, named Double, who looks like a rotund man in a yellow football outfit with a football helmet on.
I like Double because when he appears in the intro, he does that 80s sitcom thing where he's like in the middle of an activity and then he notices the camera and like turns and smiles.
Yeah.
Double's first line after he introduces himself to X is, "My liege, the Repliforce has begun it ''S coup." I did not notice that until the last time I saw that scene. That is really strange.
Yeah, there's a lot that's weird with that one sentence.
Especially because also when you see him, you'd think he'd have a kind of silly guy voice or something, but the one cutscene you hear his voice in much later is... It's really weird when you imagine him saying it like that. Like, "My liege, the Repliforce has begun its coup." This one also sets things apart by introducing each stage one by one and giving you the actual purpose as to why you would go to those places. Not just like, there's a Maverick here, kill it.
I like how the Colonel is like, look, we just want to leave peacefully and start our own society, and then X/0 immediately finds like, oh, here's like 8 Repliforce members who are doing all sorts of bad shit all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, fine. If you expect Repliforce to behave as some sort of a model minority where no one commits crimes, then yes, obviously you're going to find them wanting.
So for more than a few reasons, there's a multiple orders viable. That's true in every Mega Man game. That was obviously the appeal, is that you could do stages in whatever order you want, but some fights or stages were a lot worse. But in this case, they actually do a few things to make multiple orders viable. So in the case of the order we're going to go in, we're actually going to start with Magma Dragoon stage, because, hey, it turns out he's actually a bad guy. Who could have predicted this?
Who could have seen this coming?
So this stage is predictably like the inside of a volcano. So the first area is mostly just like you dodging fire bursting up from the ground, bottomless pits. It's pretty straightforward. Also, these areas, especially once you know them better, are pretty quick. But once you get to Area 2, there are platforms that can be destroyed by the fire that bursts up from below. So it encourages you to actually keep moving. And also, you encounter enemies in ride armor, which are the mech suits that are in every Mega Man X game. And this one has a energy blade on it. So if you aren't playing as Zero, you can still slash stuff with an energy blade.
Classic suit that's been in the series since like Mega Man X1.
Yeah.
I felt like this mech suit, the blade one specifically, was sort of a lot slower than all of the other mech suits in the whole series and in this game. And so I always really hated it. Like the range of its sword thing always felt way too short.
Yeah, the first hit's more of a poke. The second one has a big arc and actually is what I wanted to hit stuff with.
Does Zero have sort of a similar thing where the second hit is... No, it's the third hit what Zero is.
Yeah, 3-hit combo. The first one has kind of big range, the second one's really quick, but it's got really short range, and the third one does 3 hits when you connect with it as a big arc.
I wonder if there's a reason why they moved to like melee hits where the first hit is sort of one of the weaker ones.
It might just be the fighting game ethos they wanted to follow through with on his character. And also, I feel like doing single sword slashes with Zero would be murder the pace completely.
That's a good point.
You can also do a dash attack with the ride armor, though. It's pretty good. There's a regular stage route where you can reach Magma Dragoon, but if you keep the ride armor alive, then there's actually a path below the boss door where you can break through some blocks with the ride armor, and this lets you fight the boss in the armor, which is a first for the series.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
It also makes it much easier to do this fight, because it is kind of tough if you don't have his weakness.
Yeah, this is like one of the harder fights in the game if you're just using the Buster.
Well, first, when you enter the fight and it gives you the whole warning thing. Actually, that's new too. It'll pop up warning, and then the boss will appear and do their pose. And then they'll have a little dialogue with your character, which, in Magma Dragoon's case, it's just like, I love murder, ah ha 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 ha. But in most other cases, it's, I'm gonna fight you now.
Yeah, it's always kind of like the same sort of message of, no, we're not going to surrender, I'm just going to fight you until I die.
Yeah.
I really liked Magma Dragon's fight. He's very like fast, and I like that he literally has Hadokens.
I think he also does the Shoryuken, the uppercuts.
I think so, yeah.
And he has some dive kicks. Also his attack where he will like look more like a bird and shoot a huge stream of fire out, so you have to wall jump.
I loved his head in that one.
Yeah.
There's a really good statue of him doing that move, like a resin model kit, that I kinda want to waste money on. He's pretty rad.
And for this boss fight, this doesn't happen after every boss fight, it's just for this one, but after you kill him, his like torso and head are still there, and he'll say that he did it all because he was offered a chance by him to fight X or fight Zero, because he always wanted to, and apparently sparring doesn't exist in the year 21XX. And for beating Magma Dragoon, X gets Rising Fire, where he'll shoot just a fire shot straight up from the ground, or he can charge it up and do an uppercut.
That move is interesting because it's super effective against Sigma, but only because it's completely useless in every other circumstance.
And Zero gets Ryu Engen, which is pretty much the same uppercut thing. It's a flaming upward slash, and I think it's a lot more useful for him.
He sort of steps forward in the middle of it, which is better.
Yeah. So next up is Web Spider's stage, and I didn't realize this until years later, just because I'm pretty sure I heard Web Spider's stage theme before I heard Rio by Duran Duran, but I think the intros to these songs are kinda similar. This stage looks really nice, but it's just got like flowing water and greenery everywhere.
I love the merman enemies that like jump out of the water.
Yeah, they do like a spinning attack, and then they shoot you with their little spines, and they have a trident.
They should be the boss design. That guy is so cool.
And the reason why this stage is also a viable starting point is because you can get X's leg armor parts here, which let you air dash like they have since X2, but also you can just press jump again in midair and you'll hover for a little bit, which I did maybe a couple times, but moving while you're hovering shortens how long you can hover, and you do drop kind of fast. I always got kind of nervous around pits.
Yeah.
It does make it more useful if there's an enemy that's above ground level, and you just want to be level with to shoot.
Yeah, there's a couple like boss fights where having the jump jets makes it so much easier.
Talking of capsule upgrades, this is also the stage, if you use the cheat code, where you can get the ultimate armor. Which meant it was always the first level that I did when I played.
Yeah, because you can get it from any armor capsule you go to, but...
I never knew that.
Well, it's because there's no reason to do the other ones, because this one's like, do a pretty easy section of a stage, and then just walk right. Yeah, the air dash and hover will actually be pretty useful, because the end segment of this stage has a waterfall with logs going down it, so it's way easier to navigate with the upgrade.
I liked how there was some like limited terrain destruction you could do if you had Magma Dragoon's weapon. You could burn down some sections of trees and stuff.
Yeah, there's a section of a tree you can burn, and they'll have a heart container that increases your life maximum. There's a few spots where they try to drop snakes on you, and some spiders set up some web traps, but yeah, pretty straightforward. You just have to not rush ahead, otherwise you'll get caught in all of it. And you get to the boss, and it's Web Spider, who makes a weird noise when he walks around, where he goes shake, 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 shake.
That is also another sound effect that has been lodged in my brain for years.
Yeah. Also, he's defending a giant cannon that they're hiding in the jungle, so I don't know what that's for, Repliforce.
That cannon grew there naturally. What do you have against biodiversity?
I don't know if it's shown yet, but it's not treated as a big reveal, but the space base that the Repliforce wants to build has a giant gun on it also, so you need a space gun and an earth gun?
Well, I mean, you can never have enough guns, right?
You need the space gun for shooting at the Earth, and the Earth gun for shooting into space, Sid. I don't understand why this is difficult.
Web Spider also launches these homing webs at you mostly just sort of hides in the trees.
He sucks. He's a coward.
And once you do enough damage, then he'll form a giant web that he'll move around on and also spit out smaller crawling spiders that will go up the walls, so you have to be careful if you're going to take cover on the wall to dodge his homing webs, and also not bump into him.
Web Spider is interesting because he's one of the only video game spider bosses that's not scary, but only because you're too busy being annoyed. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad X killed him. You know, usually I can mourn for them because they have personalities. Web Spider is just a jerk.
And for beating Web Spider, X gets Lightning Web, which shoots out an energy web just a set distance, so it can go through walls or just end up in a wall. It does constant damage on the spot it lands, and also X can use it as a platform to wall jump off of, which will be important for an upgrade later. And Zero gets Raijin Geki, which you just press the special attack button without doing anything else, and he'll do a lightning thrust attack. Standing thrust attack, he doesn't move forward or anything. It does a lot of hits. It's actually, I think, more powerful than a full combo, or at least a little faster to get to the multi-hit part. Next stage is Storm Owl, which is kind of suspect because Mega Man X1 had Storm Eagle, though there is, I think, in the comic or some other extended material states that Storm Owl always had a rivalry with Storm Eagle.
That's awesome.
Which I can understand if
Really?
you were Storm, also bird, but less cool bird.
So here's actually a question while we're comparing the two. I always thought that the pulley platforming system thing in Storm Eagle stage in X, I never really like sort of waiting for pulleys to slowly move along a circuit. And it always sort of seems pointless because, like, why are these pulleys here in this level design? Which, I mean, platforming level design is always kind of unrealistic, but... So the plane is kind of the only thing that I really like about Storm Eagle's stage, the plane at the end being, like, the stage. Whereas Storm Eagle's stage, I like pretty much everything except the boss fight.
Storm Owls.
Like, just the palette is really cool, and there's all the planes going around, and you're in the sky, and you can sort of see the city underneath. Like, I love all the colors, and you get the cool ride armor. Like, I love this stage.
Yeah, the ride armor in this stage has wings and a giant cannon on it that you can charge up.
That one's my favorite.
And it shoots out seeking shots.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And it can air dash. So, in this section, there's a bunch of charging cannons in these positions and some smaller enemies, so you don't want to be aligned with the cannons, but you also need to move around to hit all the smaller enemies. And there's also these big cannons attached to ships that kind of remind me of the, like, iconic shot from Independence Day that blow up these other blue platforms below them.
Oh, yeah, there's that one where it's powering up and you have to, like, go through it and then go back for a heart or something.
Well, it's just got a heart container on it, so you can't, like, hang back and be super cautious, or you can restart the stage to get it again, but you'll miss it the first time.
I hate upgrades like that. This game loves doing that, where you have to, like, you only get one shot at it and you have to kill yourself afterwards.
And that's why X6 is a total nightmare for everyone. That's actually a pun, and I didn't intend to do that one.
I wasn't sure how harshly to make fun of you for it, so I'm glad you acknowledged.
Yeah, the giant charging cannons are really only a problem. The Independence Day ones, like if you're on the platform, then you're not going to recover from the stun before you fall to your death. But that's really the biggest risk you have of falling to your death in this stage set in the sky, weirdly.
Makes you feel pretty cool.
Yeah. And after that, you have a stage that's more indoors, like in a bigger carrier. And this is where you can use Lightning Web, because there's a wall of spikes. There's no other way to get up it. But actually, to get to the parts, because this is something that took me a while to figure out when I was younger, if you do a regular jump off of a wall or a Lightning Web, you don't get as much height as if you dashed into it and then did the wall jump.
Really?
This is the only place where that matters, because you can't do anything else to get to the upgrade, which is also a series first in that there are 2 capsules here for X's arm parts upgrades. There's either the one that gives you blue gloves and gives you the ability of stock charge, where you hold down the button and you'll stock up 4 charge shots, which I think is the much better one. or the one that gives you the red gloves that look cooler, but it gives you plasma shot, which after you fire a fully charged shot, which kind of looks like it has a spinning CD in it, I guess because that was a really cool aesthetic because the game was on a CD, but it'll leave behind a smaller energy ball that will constantly hit something wherever it lands, but most of the time what it will lead to you doing is triggering something's invincibility, so you hear the knocking noise of it not doing any damage.
I always got the red gloves, probably because I was just a dumb kid and thought they looked cooler.
They do.
I was watching the long play, and that person got the stock charge instead, and I was just like, what is that? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I think it's behind the other one. Like, Dr. Light does mention that, there are two choices, but then you have to sit through the cutscene again of him talking.
The choosing thing, I was wondering if that was like their attempt to follow up on the chip system in X3 that they took away, where you could sort of further upgrade your upgrades.
Yeah, I think it was maybe in part inspired by that, because you could pick like one chip, or if you did everything, you could get the gold chip that does everything. But yeah, I'm not sure. Though you can come back to the stage actually and pick the other one whenever you want. I mean, you can try them out on the spot, really, so I don't know why you'd be like at the end game, strategically now I need to switch to the functionally similar but different arm parts. Like, there's never really a reason to do it. I think this would also inspire in the later X games where you could get different armors completely. Though this is the last game where you get the armor in parts and you can use it before it's complete.
Did they keep that going in the PlayStation 2 ones, where you have to get all the parts before you can wear the armor? Because that's the worst system.
You need to get all the parts in Mega Man X7, but you're already on the losing foot because you're playing Mega Man X7. But in Mega Man X8, you can use the parts as soon as you get them, but getting any part immediately gives you the full, like, new armor design. So it's kind of unsatisfying in the opposite direction. Because once you have that armor, like, the only thing that changes is what color the parts glow.
Is it sort of deemed, the plasma one is the only one that I see, like, speedrunners or anyone using? Is that, like, the official better choice?
Really? Do they do the plasma? I thought they did the stock charge.
Maybe I've just been seeing bad speedrunners.
In most speedruns, I usually see people use the partially charged shot. Again, there's no boss door for this one, for Storm Owl. You don't even fight him in a very open space. It's just a flat floor with then another smaller platform above it. For this one, he fires three-way, like, puts his fingers out and shoots his nails at you. And also sends out wind orbs, which, if they catch you, he'll do, like, a slam attack on you. It looks pretty cool, actually.
It's a weird boss fight. Any boss fight where the boss spends, like, 90% of the time off camera and you sort of have to be ready to intercept him always feels kind of cheap.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's less like a sword fight and more like trying to sword fight a graboid from Tremors, which would also make for a cool action scene.
I can get behind that. His only real addition in Phase 2 that he can summon these giant tornado attacks. They take up a lot of vertical space. It's not like a Storm Eagle, Storm Tornado. I mean, if we're talking direct comparisons, that fight you had the risk of being blown off the stage and he would dive in from the top at you. This fight's a lot more safe. Also kind of weird because Magma Dragoon's boss arena had the lava on the sides, so there was actually more of a platforming risk in that one.
Yeah.
And for beating Storm Owl, X gets Double Cyclone. What it does is it shoots the little wind orbs diagonally upwards in a little arc in two directions, which is a very specific enemy layout.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever comes up. Meanwhile, Zero gets Tenkuha, which turns his Z-Saber into a purple Z-Saber. And that can destroy enemy projectiles, and it looks cooler with Black Zero.
Very true.
Next stage is Frost Walrus, and this one immediately starts with a visible reference because there's the frozen corpse of Blizzard Buffalo in the back. This one has much more atmospheric music. I mean, ice levels generally have pretty good music of that sort, but in this case, especially for this series, I think a lot of ice stages definitely had a lot more energy and fun to them. And this one, I actually don't think this part has any percussion at all.
Yeah, it's very, like, kind of quiet and melodic.
Yeah. Most of the enemies here are these small snowboarder dudes and snowmen and yetis. You'll mostly encounter the snowboarder guys on these forming and disappearing ice slopes. Like, it appears at first like maybe they're obscured from your view and they come into it, but no, they actually are forming and disappearing repeatedly. But they don't do a ton of hazards with them, but it does keep you moving. And there's also these slowly rising ice platforms that are just like crack when they hit the ceiling. Also, there's an item in this stage, I didn't even realize I was missing it for a lot of the times I played this game, called an EX tank. If you completely run out of lives, you'll start with 3 again, but if you have the EX tank, you'll start with 5. That's all it does.
Oh.
Is this the only game where that's a thing?
I think so.
Is that the one that's, like, way up on a cliff and you have to use the lightning web to get to?
Or the dash jump, which I could never work as a kid. Like where you wall jump while dashing?
Yeah, I could never figure out how to do that either.
I suppose you'd try checking that direction if you had a pretty good sense for secrets, but if you look at the screen, the spot where the EX tank goes, I don't know, it doesn't feel empty without it. But I mean, it's the kind of thing that I think you just completely miss it. You can just find extra lives in this game. Stages aren't that long, you don't need checkpoints that much.
Yeah.
Here's actually a point. I was going to say, there are, like, most games where there are ice physics and you slide along platforms, that's always really obnoxious. And I feel like there aren't even a lot of Mega Man games that do it very well, but this one I kind of like the idea where, with all the snowboarders and you're sort of, like, timing jumps, and it's sort of like in OG series Mega Man 8 where you're on a snowboard, but you're not on a snowboard, it's just sort of trying to time your jumps while you're sort of floating, which I think is sort of what you want to do if you're trying to bring in ice physics, like to actually play with it.
Yeah.
And the EX tank is sort of above, like right where you're sort of getting ready to turn while you're doing the slope.
Yeah.
So that's sort of why I would always ignore it, because I'd sort of be getting into the vibe of moving.
Ice physics are otherwise not too harsh, except when you're on slopes where it'll make you accelerate really fast. And yeah, the EX tank is right by there, so you just have to say, they're kind of shunting me in this direction pretty quick. What are they hiding? When you get to the end of this section, there's a sub-boss that's this giant ice claw. And I think the weirdest thing, I don't know if either of you felt this way, but the actual ice claw thing that forms, it looks like it's shaded like an SNES game.
Yeah, kind of. It kind of looks like it came out of, like, an older Mega Man X game.
Yeah, it's very strange, because the actual core part is shaded like everything else in the game, with like a sort of richness of color, but it seems like there's far fewer on the ice hand. This fight's not too bad. The boss usually just does a thing where it'll form spikes on the ceiling, try to crush you with them, or ram into you, and after you do enough damage, it turns into an ice spike ball that'll ping around the arena. It would be probably more challenging, but it doesn't have a lot of health, and like Zero especially can tear through this thing really quick.
Yeah. I like the idea of the boss, like how it uses ice to kind of change its own form, but it doesn't get the chance to do a whole lot.
But after you kill this sub-boss, you get teleported to Area 2, and this has much more melodic music. This is the only Area 2 where the music outright changes between the two sections. This one is much more about maneuvering around these frozen ice cubes, and you want to destroy them in such a way that you don't set off bombs that could hurt you or release enemies. Since it's a constrained space, having the flying enemies that can shoot at an angle is pretty bad for you. And also you need to break them in a specific order if you want to get the weapon tank, which you can use to refill your special weapon energy.
The bomb and the block thing was kind of interesting, because that was the same shtick they used for, Grenade Man in Mega Man 8? And so they're sort of like opposite themed bosses with the same gimmick, which is kind of cool. Not opposite. Explosions and ice are not,
In a way.
Explosions, the opposite of ice.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I have a nice cold drink in front of me, and if you put a grenade in it, it wouldn't be a nice cold drink anymore.
I feel like there's probably a One Piece character who loves drinking a glass of grenades.
Yeah, probably. Also, this area has more of the Mets. They're the little army helmet guys that have a little face underneath and just two little legs, and they're adorable. later in the stage, there are these bird enemies that if you don't blow them up for a certain amount of time, they'll glow and then the screen will white out and get covered in ice. And it'll add a hazard to that small section.
Those guys are cool.
Yeah, they look really cool.
I feel like that's a very Mega Man X, or the original Mega Man sort of enemy, like those guys that would light up the screen.
Or like those, the weather control things in X2.
Oh, yeah. I like enemies like that. They're really fun.
So after you clear that section, you reach Frost Walrus, who's most notable for being huge.
Again, sort of like, was it just Frost Man in 8?
Yeah.
He's a giant too.
Though, like, Walrus feels bigger in a way that feels like one-upping. Walrus's attacks are all just taking advantage of his size, so he'll try to belly slide at you, or jump around, and mostly you just have to try to move out of the way, like, before he commits to it, because if you don't, the floor is kind of slippery, so you can't react on instinct as much as you can with the smaller bosses. He also summons the giant frost tower and either pushes it at you or tries to drop it on you.
This boss was always notable to me for being, like, the disparity in difficulty between just using your buster versus using it as a weakness was, like, so huge.
Yeah.
If you use the Rising Dragoon's weapon on him, it knocks him into the side, and then he always does the same attack afterwards, where he, like, slides across the ground towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes, like, it's not even a fight at that point.
Yeah. It took a little more research to remember all the attacks these bosses have, because once you know their weaknesses, pretty much every boss in this game is completely trivialized.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, in NES Mega Man, like, obviously the weapons would do more damage if you use the right weakness, but at this point, if you use the weakness on them, it also, like, knocks them out of whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it completely, like, resets their AI.
Yeah.
So for beating him, X gets Frost Tower, which is that ability that he used. It also gives you invincibility when you're inside of it, but it doesn't move. So I guess if you were in a really tight spot, you could use it to give yourself a couple extra seconds to think.
Usually you spend that time thinking and then you decide to do the same thing over again.
And Zero gets Hyoretsuzan, which is the falling ice attack you can do from midair, which creates a big icicle that drops and shatters when you hit the ground, which looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that attack. For Zero, it always seemed a lot easier to use than X's version.
Downward stabs in most 2D platforming games are generally the best bet, though. Also, like, it locks you into that downwards motion, so I can remember more than a couple times I did Hyoretsuzan a little early, and I was over a pit, and I just helplessly sailed off screen.
Oh no.
It's the worst. So after you beat 4 Mavericks, you will get a message from Colonel who wants to meet at Memorial Hall and have a showdown. This is also something that's kind of interesting. You're playing as Zero, then you get a fancy anime cutscene where Zero tells Colonel to stop the coup.
I'm disappointed in you, Colonel.
What do you think you're doing?
It's not too late. Stop the coup now.
If you're playing as X, instead of that, you'll get an actual boss fight against Colonel, which is interesting because it'll give you practice for when you fight him for real later. So for this fight, he'll fire energy saber waves at you and also teleport to where you are, but only on the ground level. So you have to jump away because he'll slash and then he'll dash away.
I like this fight a lot. In the same way that I like Magna Dragoon's fight, just because he's very, like, fast and he has a lot of interesting moves.
And also his voice sample when he slashes where he's like, "Odia!" That sounds really fighting game.
Yeah.
At this point with X or later on with Zero, like, he's always where I end my runs of this game because I just can't do it. He's not my favorite boss. I'm gonna disagree. I'm bad at this boss.
I'm not great at it, for sure. And it is a little weird because you can have his weakness by this point, but if you don't, then you have to do it. You can't pick other stages.
Right.
If you have enough trouble with it, that you would just think, Guess I can't play Mega Man X4 anymore.
Yeah, which is kind of weird.
I kind of like this, like the fact that it locks you down from getting stuff. Like if you want to get the mid boss's like weakness is kind of weird, but I really like sort of the idea of a breather in the middle of the, not a breather, but like a weird intermission.
Yeah, change of pace.
Yeah.
If you beat him as X, then you just, this isn't over, and he leaves. Whereas with Zero in the cutscene, Iris shows up, because Iris is the Colonel's brother, insofar as that matters, and just makes them stop fighting, and then tells Zero not to kill him, and also tells Colonel not to kill Zero. And, of course, since this is a Mega Man game, that will definitely happen.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, next up is Jet Stingray's stage, and this one is an entire gimmick level because you are pursuing him on a ride chaser, which is a future jet ski.
Yeah.
And it has a cannon on the front, and also when you dash, it has a little energy blade that slashes through stuff in front of you.
This is another one that was also in X1, I think.
No, it was X2.
I know Overdrive Ostrich, you can jump on one.
Yeah, on Overdrive Ostrich's stage you can get on one and kind of go back and forth sort of freely. I never liked how it controlled, but I think you needed to get one upgrade.
I actually really liked being able to turn around with the X2 one, because I think I played this one before any of the other X games, and it always killed me. Like, I'd always miss the energy tank in this one, and you couldn't turn around. So being able to do that in X2, I really appreciated.
Yeah, because this is one of those stages that scrolls automatically, and if you don't keep up, you'll get crushed against the side of the screen against nothing.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the stage was fine, but I didn't really care for it.
I'd probably like it less if the music wasn't really fitting.
That's true. The music is really good in the stage.
Now here's a question. Is this the first stage where it's like entirely like a gimmick when you're on a motorcycle or whatever? I know like 7 and 8 sort of leaned on that a lot more.
Yeah, this is the first one.
Well, in that case, it's the worst level of the game.
I liked it here, but when it came up again in it's an X5 and an X7 and X8 and stuff, I'm just like, it wasn't that good. Like, it's good enough to do once, I think.
And then you learned your lesson.
But also to navigate the stage the easiest, you have to realize too that the dash for the bike, even if you go off an edge, unlike with X, if you're on the ground and you dash off an edge, you won't fall, you will keep going straight. That, and sometimes you just have to drop down. Like, you don't have to do anything, especially if you want to get the heart container in part 1. You just have to drop. You have to move ahead, I guess, so you don't get crushed by the screen. But other than that, like, jumping around and trying to predict it actually will probably get you killed more than just moving. And then at the end of part 1, you have to keep dashing to break through a bunch of barriers. And there's so many explosions, too, that if you think there's not constantly barriers you have to keep dashing through, you'll definitely die.
Yeah.
Part 2 is in a much more open area. There's some, like, spike balls. I guess they're supposed to be depth chargers, but they don't explode. There's just some of those that you have to jump over on the water level, and you have to make a tricky jump upwards to get the energy tank. That's to refill your health. And also at one point, Jet Stingray will appear, actually, and attack you, which I thought was kind of neat.
Yeah, I like that he pops up in the stage. It kind of dispels the, like, oh, he's just waiting in this one confined room until someone walks in and fights him.
You also have like the rival motorcyclists in, I think, the first part and the second part both.
Mm-hmm.
I really love stuff like that. Like that, the guy in the opening stage, like showing up and trying to claw at you, and in the first X game where like different bosses, if you've defeated them, like the lava in Flame Mammoth stage, like won't be hot anymore and you can walk on it. Like that sort of stuff is always the best part of the game. Like the bosses interacting with you and affecting things, because usually they're just sitting in a room.
Yeah, it seems like the series should have moved more in that direction of interconnectedness. They did that in X1, and X2 and X3, I don't really remember that.
They really didn't.
And then X6 tried to bring it back in a really terrible way. But yeah, after you get through the section, the bike will just go flying off into the distance, and X or Zero will jump off of it. And there's also a health refill, actually, before this boss explicitly, which I remember being pretty nice. And then you fight Jet Stingray. He attacks with dives, like he'll float at the top screen and then rapidly dive down to hit you. He'll fire his weapon, the Ground Hunter, which will fly overhead, and then once you pass under it, it'll go down immediately to hit you, or he'll shoot it down at the bottom of the screen and will move along the floor. And I think you can do both at the same time, so you really have to navigate around the middle of the arena more than other fights. I thought this one was actually pretty tough.
Yeah, I hated this fight. He's really difficult if you're just using the Buster. And actually, even using Frost Walrus's attack against him makes it easier, but it's still got some challenge to it.
I think this one and the Colonel are where I usually would call in my brother.
He also does an attack where he'll like fly horizontally off screen and then come in from the top or bottom.
Sucks. It sucks so much when they do that.
And shouts, yeah.
Wait, does he? I completely forgot about that.
He's like, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I take it back. This guy's the best. He's a total bro. Him and Mondo Gecko and all the other Ninja Turtle buddies, they should all just hang out. Oh wait, there was a Manta Ray Ninja Turtle buddy. That's what I'm thinking of.
When he damages enough for phase 2, he has a suction move. If you're far enough away from him, like you stay on the other end of the arena, there's nothing really to worry about. I guess you can't really attack him as much, but it would be nice if the special weapons worked as counters to these special moves. So like you'd fire a Frost Tower and you'd suck it in and it would hit him. Then make it so that you're not doing it all the time to make the fight pointless.
Yeah.
But it would also cut out the fact that you can't really attack them during these phases.
Oh, I think that's why the Plasma is sort of one of the preferred weapons, is because there are so many bosses that sort of lock down your position so you can't hit them, whereas the Plasma leaves that trail and then it'll keep damaging them for a few seconds while you're unable to hit.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. So for beating this boss, X gets Ground Hunter.
It's the Ice Chaser from Metal Slug.
Oh yeah.
Or the Ice Chaser, the Chaser something, the missile.
Yeah.
Little toy cars.
Or the Search Snake from Mega Man 3. It's good against like certain very specific scenarios, like if you fight Web Spider afterwards, then this is good for the spiders that crawl up the walls. Like it seems tailor-made to counter that. Really nothing else. You can shoot it pretty rapidly though. And Zero gets Hien Kyaku, which is an air dash move. Because this is how Zero gets additional abilities like that. You just have to defeat the right boss.
This sequence you're using is only for X play, right? Because I can't fathom playing any of this game without getting Zero's double jump, like, immediately.
This one's not too bad. I feel like there are a lot of platformers with double jump where I really feel like I sorely need it. Though definitely, like, when I do jumps that I did in a single jump, if I have double jump, I will do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess Zero only has, like, 4 moves that would actually, like, hit a weakness instead of just making it easier to dodge an attack or something, so I guess the sequence is less important with Zero.
Yeah. There's no attack effect applied to it at all. You don't air dash into the boss that's weak against Ground Hunter.
It'd be great if you did.
That's the next boss, Slash Beast.
So cool.
Yeah, I really like the music on this stage.
Is he meant to be related to Slash Man from 7, or is that just they ran out of adjectives? That's not even an adjective, that's just a verb.
Yeah.
Slashy Beast.
Mega Man beat Jump Man. Shoot Cat. My favorite Mega Man X boss, Shoot Cat.
Yeah, I like this stage a lot.
It's the materials transport for Repliforce, so it's on a big moving train.
Yeah, so now Mega Man is committing terrorist atrocities on public transportation.
Is it public?
I think it's a freight train.
So the trick of this stage is actually it's multiple trains. Because there are Mets on here and also the Repliforce soldiers from the first stage. And they have their guns, but they also throw grenades, and at set points, they'll throw a grenade to blow up a coupling, and you just have to jump off the train before you fall behind.
It's cool.
Yeah, and this is actually one of the places where there's those pratfalls, because the first Repliforce soldier will throw a grenade and then lose his balance and fall onto the rail.
Oh, yeah.
which is funny looking. Like it's not. It sounds terrible now that I said, "Ha!" He falls onto the train track and gets crushed by a train, but no, he just blows up instantly. The second Repliforce soldier will also throw a grenade and blow up the coupling and seem to lose his balance, but then he runs off to the side. So he's actually there, waiting for you when you jump over. And then you kill him.
That's the same guy. That's cute. I never noticed that.
Yeah, and there are also the bat enemies. This is, I think, the only stage they're on in X4. They were pretty common in all the other X games, especially on a Armored Armadillo stage.
Oh, yeah. They're a fun, like, Mega Man staple, I think.
Yeah.
Just in general, I like them. They're like Metools that aren't super annoying because they're not, like, in your way on the ground.
Which is kind of funny because that's usually not the reputation of bats in video games.
Right.
Also, some of the trains have the giant charge cannons from Storm Owl's stage. And also, this has the Energy Blade ride armor that was on Magma Dragoon's stage. And the sub-boss for this stage is, I remember it being a cannon, but it's actually like, you jump off a train, and then another one comes up behind you. And it has, like, it looks like it has a fist, but the knuckles are these spears, and it shoots the spears at you.
I never noticed that.
Yeah.
That's weird. I remembered it as a cannon, too.
The cannon sub-boss is actually on Storm Owl's stage, and we didn't even mention it because it's not really worth noting. But yeah, this thing, mostly, I mean, you can get kind of right up on it without much trouble and destroy it that way. It's pretty straightforward. It's not really any gimmick to this one outside of just shoot it a lot.
Yeah.
But when you do, the train will go into a tunnel and you'll enter Area 2, where there'll be a bunch of broken train tracks. You have to do a lot more navigating here and watching out for pits. I think I've fallen in the pits here a couple of times just because the enemy placement's a bit more tricky. This is actually where the ride armors first show up. It's not in Area 1. And there's some boxes that I think with /Beast weapon you can break them, but also with ride armor you can break most of them. One of them has a heart container in it. But eventually you get on another train and it starts up as soon as you get on, which I appreciate the change in pace, but it is a little weird. It felt like you were kind of dropping onto this train in motion and you were going to fight your way to the front, but then there's a break and you get off a train, and then there's a train waiting for you to get on it.
I actually love this stage in general and that sort of part. They could have made it feel more like a train depot and the space between, but I liked sort of the idea of moving between tracks to chase different rails and stuff. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think just visually it might have been nice if, like, you got up, you went on some broken tracks, and then you jumped down and landed on a train that was in motion.
Ooh, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
And then you approach an open area. It's kind of funny, you just see a single crate, and then all these other crates, like, form the walls of the arena. You're like, oh, /Beast is gonna just bust out of that crate. But no, he comes running alongside the train, and then jumps on and smashes the crate.
Is it one of the crates that you can't break without the robot?
Without the weapon, yeah.
Because then that's a really cool way to introduce a boss, by showing him doing a thing you can't do.
Yeah.
It's classic.
Actually, this boss has one of the few similarities to Slashman, because he does a lot of that dashing across the arena and doing jumping slashes. He's probably the most mobile of the bosses. Well, actually, no. I'd say Split Mushroom's more so, but that one also taxes like your ability to manage multiple targets. This is just one fairly fast enemy.
Funny thing about this boss is he's like super athletic and dexterous and is like jumping on the walls and stuff. But his weakness is the Seeker.
Yeah, Ground Hunter.
Yeah, and it literally just like trips him and he falls over. Which always struck me as funny.
That's great.
It seems like really the least likely weapon, too.
Yeah, totally.
Because there's a problem that the series in general had after, like, 2. What's the weakness of Snake? What's the weakness of Centaur? Yeah, like, Chargeman, what's the weakness of trains? I don't know. He's not on a railing. That's the only weakness I normally associate with trains. To have the animation respond like that is pretty funny. For beating him, X gets Twin Slasher, which shoots at not 45, more like 35 degree angles in front of you, upwards and downwards, just 2 separate shots. That doesn't come up too often either, but it's a lot more useful than Double Cyclone just because you can fire it fairly quickly. It allows you to attack off angle a little more. And Zero gets Shipuga, which is a dashing slash attack that I always forgot to use. Twin Slasher, if you charge it up, it can destroy blocks that Ride Armor X could. And Shipuga can do it also, but there's never anything behind those blocks. You need to use this actually in Magma Dragoon's stage in Area 2. There's a higher up area with those blocks, and this will let you get the body parts for X, which will reduce the amount of damage you take. Also, when you do take damage, it'll fill up the energy for your Giga attack, which is its own separate button that you can unleash as the Nova Strike, which is an invincible dash move that does a ton of damage.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot that existed.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you do it, I think even if you whiff, it completely drains the energy. So it looks cool, but compared to, like, the Giga attack in X2, where it would look like X is about to do the Spirit Bomb or something, where he just, like, stretches his arms out and just energy shots rain across the whole screen, a little less impressive.
Yeah, I want to say original Mega Man in 8 even has like a much cooler pose when he does summoning Astro Man's thing.
Yeah.
Which you don't really expect rounded Mega Man to have a cooler version of anything than X.